Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I'm John Wesley Chatham, and this is my sugar britches, Ty Franck, sitting over here looking all spiffy. How you doing, Ty?
Not too bad. I'm glad I didn't dress up because Joseph was like, hey, remember to wear all your Christmas gear for this episode. And I noticed you didn't wear anything, so I'm really glad I didn't put on some dumbass Christmas sweater. I would feel very overdressed.
I actually regret this right now because I wanted to do something for Christmas. To be honest, I totally forgot. I texted Joseph today and I was like, oh, fuck, I don't have anything for Christmas. But kind of disappointed because we did it last year. And so I feel like we should do this. You know,
well, don't worry. There's always the magic of post. So this will be Christmased up.
You can chroma his black shirt.
Yeah. I was thinking, Ty, because you're so still and you don't move like Wes, I might, put a little Santa hat on you and you already got the beard. So, I was thinking of Buddy the Elf hat.
I had one shirt that looks like it has like a ribbon on it, which was kind of like Christmas present-y. So I put my ribbon shirt on.
Go put it on.
It is a ribbon right there.
Yeah, that is awesome. It's like Thor's ribbon. Thor's lightning bolts in the ribbon.
Yeah. That's the only thing I have that has a ribbon on it.
But see, the thing is like it's hard for me to decide like what is our Christmas special because Scrooged was a Christmas, a Christmas movie, Christmas special. And I'm glad we're throwing a shout out to Gremlins because I think it's a Christmas movie that people kind of have forgotten. But I wouldn't like our official Christmas special would be like Christmas Vacation or something like that. It would have, or Scrooged, maybe that was our Christmas Vacation. What I wanted to do was wear what you said last time, Joseph, like wear a tank top and like I was going to have Jen do like makeup, like the same makeup in Die Hard and like dirty up my tank top, and then
nice.
But best laid plans,
If you're going to go that way, can I be Ellis?
You don't have Ellis's gear.
I could get a suit.
Hey, maybe from your call center days when you were in the corporate world.
I could put on my suit and
Do you remember when like phone shops, like phone centers, like you would go in and it was like the guys in like the 90s suit when they would have the hip holster phone thing and they would like, and they would go through the phone. They're like slick salesmen selling phones to you. You remember that?
I don't. I guess I wasn't buying a lot of phones in the 90s.
No. What are we talking about today?
In the spirit of the Christmas season, which, this will come out in like March, so it'll seem very oddly out of place. But in the spirit of the Christmas season, we're going to do some Christmas movie magic. One of the greatest Christmas films ever told. I mean, we both agree the greatest Christmas movie ever is Die Hard. But in the top 10, easily in the top 10, is today's movie, which is the classic Gremlins.
Would you put it in your top 10 of Christmas movies?
Absolutely. Might even put it in my top 5.
Wow. That's big.
But the thing you got to know is I hate all traditional Christmas movies. The only Christmas movies I actually like are the weird ones like this. Like I like Die Hard, I like Gremlins. I like anything where it's not like the sappy, sentimental, the spirit of Christmas is family. I'm just like,
but that's what makes a Christmas movie.
But
it's
I hate those
hope.
movies.
You're the real life Grinch. Like I fucking hate those movies.
I do.
Well, actually, I don't think the Grinch said that. Did he ever say I fucking hate Christmas movies?
I think he did. So. Yeah. Well, that's in the uncut, the director's cut of the Grinch.
The director's cut. He's like, I will kill all of you.
They also, sadly, they also cut the scene where the Grinch machine guns 4 orphans. That like. Why did they cut that scene? It was my favorite scene.
I don't think there's any orphans in Whoville. I think if there's...
there aren't anymore, not when the Grinch gets done with them.
That's why that there's no orphans there is because the Grinch...
He just machine guns them.
Then he eats them. There was a scene there in the original Gremlins in which we're going to get into. I guess we'll get into it right now. That's what we're doing. But the Gremlins was like dark as really dark. And one of the things that like, holy shit, kind of like is... when they, the dog that they tie up with the Christmas lights, that dog was eaten by gremlins, like to the bone. And so he wakes up and it's just a dog skeleton that was eaten. It's like, oh my God, and then all the things that happened there.
See, that I would have liked. That would be a great scene.
And then, the original intention of what Gremlins was going to be when I'm reading about it, I'm like, I bet Ty would like this. Like, the great scene in the movie, and I don't want to jump ahead of everything, but there's a great scene in the movie where the mom is like fighting with all the inventions with the gremlins, and she put us in the microwave. Yeah, that's the one where
she puts the gremlin in the microwave.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that scene, she in the script, she gets decapitated, and they take the head and they throw it down the stairs, and they start playing with her head. And, I mean, it gets dark. So Christopher Columbus wrote this script, and he was inspired because Christopher Columbus, Clint's a huge fan because he did the first Harry Potter. Adventures in Babysitting was his directorial debut. But Christopher Columbus, he also discovered America. But in the draft that he had, he was staying in a loft apartment in New York. And he said at night, it was one of those apartments, and at night he could hear the rats running around on the floors, and it terrified him. And he said one night his hand was like, he was asleep, his hand was hanging off the bed, and he said he could have sworn he felt like a furry thing run underneath him. So then he used that terror to create Gremlins, with never having the intention that it would get made. Steven Spielberg came across it, found the script on his desk, came across it, and said, I think this is one of the most original things that I've read. I'm going to make this into a movie. And Spielberg is the one that made it into like a family-friendly movie.
Right.
And kind of put all the family stuff. When did you first see Gremlins, and what was your first impression?
I saw it when it came out at the theater. So, like, as I've mentioned before, I had weirdo parents who, like, you couldn't watch any R-rated movies or anything. So I didn't get to go to the theater and watch horror movies, which was, of course, my favorite kind of movie. And then Gremlins came out, and suddenly there was, like, a PG horror movie, and like, I don't know why, but I was allowed to go to that one. So I walked to the theater, and I probably saw Gremlins like 3 times at the theater. I would just walk over to the theater and I watch Gremlins. It was awesome. I was the perfect age for it, where I was like young enough to still think the Gremlins and stuff were cool, but I was old enough to appreciate the sort of dark humor of it. Because it's a funny movie, but it is a dark version of humor.
Do you watch it regularly?
No, I actually hadn't seen it in a while. I mean, I revisited it when I knew we were doing it for this, but I hadn't seen it in a while, and rewatching it, I mean, it's still a classic, man. It's got scenes that I had forgotten that on the rewatch, I couldn't believe I had forgotten those scenes, because like I realized that there's jokes that I make that are directly stolen from this movie that I had forgotten where I got them from.
Give an example.
This is kind of a long, elaborate joke, but somebody will mention something that is really important to them, and then with a straight face, I'll start telling the story about how that thing killed my father. Yeah. And people, like, they never know what you're doing. They're like, wait a minute, what's happening right now? Like, I'll be like, yeah, we found my father underneath the thing.
Like, the thing, yeah. So going back and watching this movie, there are movies like Gremlins that worked. It was like a lightning strike, right? Because it was such that the tone threads a needle, and it could go wrong so many times. Yep. And it kind of goes into dark humor to like Spielbergian kind of awe and wonder and storytelling, and then into like real horror moments in the thing. And so the Gremlins are scary enough, but they're not too scary so you can laugh at them. But they're enough scary that there's a threat that actually holds a threat of danger that kind of pushes in the story forward. So it's such and I think Joe Dante is a big reason for that. And because you remember The Howling, you remember the movie did The Howling, and so it kind of walks that like interesting tone. I think he's an Italian film director, so it has that kind of, there's something off kilter about it that just really works. And anybody could try to make this movie now, and I would bet against it.
Yeah, the tightrope that they walk tone-wise with this movie is amazing, because like if you just teeter a little bit to either side, it becomes stupid. It becomes like laugh at bad, where it's like it's so wrong that you're not laughing with the movie, now you're laughing at it. And they get away with the horror elements and still manage to keep it like feeling a little family friendly.
Yeah,
like that's tricky, man.
Well, what's interesting is I was like, I'm going to show this to my kids, because we were getting ready for the podcast. And I was like, look, you guys want to watch a Christmas movie? I'm going to show you a real Christmas movie. So I put on Gremlins. And I figured like they'll probably watch the first act, probably right up to the second act before Gremlins show up. And, and then they're going to be fine because it's fun. It's funny. It's a good time. Gizmo's interesting. They're going to think he's interesting. And they were captivated. But I was surprised at how quickly they got scared.
Yeah.
How quickly I was like, all right, I'm turning it off. And before the Gremlins showed up.
Really?
And yeah, oh yeah.
What was the thing that pushed him out?
The creepy pods. You know, the like the ominous looking body, the invasion of the body snatcher pods.
Yeah.
And then the gremlin that eats the sandwich in the science teacher's office.
Right.
And he starts to change in the cage, and then you show up and he's like snipping the cage off, and it's that thing. So it's a really cool setup because the ominous warning when the dad goes into the shop of like, the guy's like, no, you can't have the mugwai. By the way, mugwai means demon in Cantonese. It means monster and it means demon. You know, and he says, basically, they state the premise of the movie. It's like, it's too much responsibility, and irresponsibility has consequences. That's what the movie is. And so he goes in there and he's, you know, sees the mugwai, and the guy's like, you know, no mugwai. And so you kind of like, now there's a mystery around this creature, right? Like, why the fuck? And the rules are so weird. Like, you know, no bright lights, that makes sense, but you can't get it wet, and it can't eat after midnight. Like, when is it? Like, it should be a window. Like, you can't eat after midnight and 3 a.m. Like, because everything's after midnight, and in some ways, they're like, what? You know, like, what is it about midnight that makes that work? But anyway, the rules are so weird, the character's so mysterious, and it has the right amount of cute. So the setups are great. It just pulls you in. You know, and also being in Chinatown. And another thing, too, that I think that worked in the 80s and earlier is that the world was a lot bigger back then, right? There was a lot, and you could have, like, Chinatown, and people, like, have no idea what it is or where it is. And then you can tell these myths and these stories about gremlins in Chinatown because we didn't, you know, not at that time, you didn't know much about Chinese history or China or that culture or anything like that. So now everybody has more of a sense of the world. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was much easier to get away with racist stereotypes back then because we didn't know. We were just sort of like, maybe Chinese people have magical monsters. How do we know?
Well, there's one big fluff, like, to me, like, one big head scratcher in the movie. His neighbor, who's xenophobic, right? And he's like those kind of like old school World War II guy. But he's drunk one night and he's leaving the bar, and he's talking about World War II, and he talks about being in China and they would put gremlins in their machines, like fighting again. And it's like, China was our ally. we were not at war with China. Japan was attacking China.
China was being invaded by Japan.
Yeah, Japan were like, so they were there. So like, you're saying that, you know, he's telling a war story about China during World War II, and it's like, we weren't at war with China at World War II.
Maybe he was talking about helping the Chinese against the Japanese.
No, it's pretty clear. I mean, maybe Joseph. Okay, okay, maybe Joseph can pull up the scene. But, you know, you hear that and, you know, you think, well, maybe there was an 80s crowd that was like, oh, yeah, you know, them gremlins, you know, it's like back in the day. And it's like, nope, they were our allies. They were not, we weren't at war with those guys. Because why would they be putting gremlins in the machines if we were helping them, you know? But yeah, there's like things that you get away with the 80s like that I thought were interesting. Did you recognize the dog from Pumpkinhead? It was the same dog.
I did not.
In Pumpkinhead. Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah.
Speaking of that scene, though, where he gets the mogwai from the Chinese shopkeeper, they did a fantastic spoof of that on The Simpsons. Do you remember that one? In the Treehouse of Horror, at one of the episodes where Homer goes and buys the Krusty doll for Bart from the weird shop. Yeah. And it's the evil Krusty episode, or the evil Krusty doll episode where the Krusty doll's trying to murder them. They do a fantastic look. Joseph, if you get a chance, clip in the thing where Homer's talking to the guy and the guy is like telling him about how the item is cursed, and they keep going back and forth. It is one of the funniest little Gremlin spoofs ever.
I thought it was pretty funny. It's like he was trying to sell the bathroom buddy to that guy, and I'm like, look around in that fucking shop, dude. You think anybody wants the bathroom buddy in that shop? You know, what are you doing? And then he sees the mugwai, and he's like, I gotta have it. I've been looking for this everywhere. Like these like things. Like, it's like, you've been looking for little creatures everywhere.
Well, I mean, was that? No, that was before. I was gonna say, did he think it was like a Furby?
One of the things that I want to ask you about, and what you would have thought about it, is Gizmo and Stripe were originally the same creature. In that, as the movie progresses, Gizmo's arc is he gets darker and darker and darker, and he turns into Stripe at the end, and then he has to be killed at the end like Stripe dies. And Spielberg said, no, let's make Gizmo really cute, and Gizmo should be somebody that the audience is rooting for, and Stripe would be separate. What do you think about that?
That sounds like a Spielberg decision. As much as I think that Spielberg is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, he does have this tendency toward the sort of sappy and sentimental, and he can be a little syrupy sometimes. So it doesn't surprise me that he was like, no, we have to let the cute one live. And, that doesn't surprise me.
But I bet this version of the movie would be a lot more successful than the dark version.
Yes. And there's a reason why Spielberg is one of the most successful directors of all time. Mm-hmm. Like his little sappy, syrupy thing that he does is also part of the reason why he is so beloved. So, who's to say he's wrong?
Yeah. To talk about tone for a second, the three major scenes, the scene where the mother is at war with the gremlins in the kitchen. And it was a great setup before, the guy's an inventor and they're, going to, and I love me like a Back to the Future 80s invention like thing where there's an inventor and there's all these, like the camera pans to all these inventions. So you have the mother who ends up putting the gremlin in the microwave and she's fighting all these gremlins and she's, kicks their ass. And then there was the science teacher when that was a very spooky scene and you have the overhead projector and it was running and the whole way that's come out. And then Phoebe Cates in that story about her dad, like where did this story come from and why is it right here? And it's so dark.
That is my favorite part of that entire movie. She's telling that story about her dad.
It's like, she talks about her dad he was being Santa and he went down the chimney and he broke his neck and they didn't know till they started smelling him in the spring. Yeah,
smelling him in the chimney.
It's like, oh my God.
I love that scene so much, and I love that story. I mean, as I was saying, like I use that gag all the time. There's just and we're not talking about Gremlins 2 today, but they realized, clearly they realized how silly that wound up being, because in Gremlins 2, I forget what she's talking about, but it's like, oh, my family doesn't celebrate, I completely forget what it is, but it's like, we don't celebrate Valentine's Day. And then she started telling some story about some family members died on.
I think it was Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, yeah. Some family member of hers dies on Thanksgiving.
But the story works. The story works in the film. I mean, it's a weird film, and it works on all these different levels, and it's just crazy how they work like that. And so those scenes, they give it the weight. So the Gremlins are a legitimate threat. If the Gremlins were
by the end, the Gremlins are fucking scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're chucking saw blades like throwing stars and burying them halfway into a concrete wall. I mean, they're badass.
Yeah. It's like they're all sociopathic college-age kids.
Yeah.
It's like sociopath college-age kids. And I wonder, what's the story? Is Gizmo just one of the Mugwai that it's like Frodo from Lord of the Rings? He's just resistant to the genetic evil that exists in Gremlins?
I don't know. They don't really go into the lore of it, which I think is smart. You shouldn't go into the lore. You should just the smart things about the way they wrote this movie is you go into the weird shop, and I have a whole rant about exoticism, but they use exoticism to hide the sort of plot holes. You go into this weird shop, there's this exotic guy, he tells you this weird random thing of here's this furry little thing, but don't get it wet and don't feed it after midnight. And because the setting is exotic and weird and you don't understand what's going on, you just accept those rules. You just oh, okay, I guess that's the rules, right? Because nothing else is normal in there, right? And I think that's why you get away with it, because once you've accepted those rules, then the movie can just play those rules out and show the consequences of them. I think if you start trying to explain why the rules work that way, that's when it falls apart, because you start to see through the premise at that point. Don't explain anything. The guy says the rules. We play out the rules in the rest of the movie. Everybody just accepts it, and that's why the movie works. So I'm glad they don't try to explain things.
Yeah, I am too. I'm always that way. I like the mystery, but I like to think about things, and I think they do. I think that the movie does allude to something like that, because when they find Gizmo, it's like there's a kindness they have to them, and Gizmo's immediately there's a sweetness to Gizmo, and then they're so paranoid about it multiplying. The guy tells a story about the Gremlins and what it did to their airplanes and things like that. So it's almost like that gizmo is, there's something abnormal about it.
Well, he's definitely abnormal because he's the one who chooses not to eat.
Yeah, he chooses not to eat, and then when the other ones are in the mugwai stage of their development, they're all assholes even then.
Yeah.
And then they'll have nothing to do with Gizmo. Gizmo has nothing to do with them. Yep. And so there is a little bit of that there is. So if the lore is baked in the cake, where it's like it's consistent with something that they have an idea of what this is, I found that interesting because, you know, because it makes the thing more ominous when he drops the water on him and Gizmo's like all upset and he's like, "What's wrong, Gizmo?" And he shakes his head like, "You fucking idiot." Yeah. You know, you just, you know, and so it's like, oh, these creatures are out of fucking control, and just somehow Gizmo comes along and he's not one of those. So they keep him but he's not like one of the crazy ones.
I do feel like once you realize how easy it is to mess the rules up, and how serious the consequences are for messing the rules up, selling Gizmo to that guy for his kid is like selling him a loaded gun. Like, tell your kid not to point this at himself and pull the trigger. Like, okay, yeah, those are good rules, but it's still a fucking loaded gun.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't the kid, and this is not movie logic, this is real life logic, couldn't the fucking kid say, "Hey, if, here are the rules, and you need to follow those rules because they turn into little fucking monsters that'll tear your house apart, kill your dog, and try to kill your mom."
Yeah.
And then you'd be like, "Okay, I'll follow these rules." And then, then he gives him to his son, who's a teenager who's still in high school, so he's irresponsible. And, they show that by when, at the bank when Phoebe Case is like, "Cross your T's." And it's like, well, he's 18. He doesn't cross his T's, and he has his name mask upside down and like all that stuff. By the way, Phoebe Case is beautiful.
Yeah.
And this is like, 4 years after Fast Times? Because you got Judge Reinhold, you got Phoebe Cakes, and he's always pining after Phoebe Cakes. At least, but now this is kind of like the sequel to Fast Times, where he's just like an asshole bank manager. There, who was originally going to be the lead was Emilio Estevez and Judd Nelson, and Emilio Estevez was this close to getting it. And Spielberg watched his tape, and he was like, "He's eternalizing." And so they cut it down. Like, Spielberg was not a fan of like the whole method and like taking it serious and all that stuff. He understood that this was a popcorn movie or whatever. Do you think it would have been a better or worse movie with Emilio?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different Emilio Estevez's, and it depends on which one you got.
I think it would be Maximum Overdrive Emilio.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not great.
You and I disagree on that. You know what? I mean, no disrespect to what's this? The guy's name? The guy that's starring in it?
Zach something. I forget it.
God, we are the worst.
We are the worst
podcast commentators all the time. People are like, I could fucking go talk to my friends at a bar and know more about Gremlins than you assholes.
Well, but that's the thing. That's what we've always said is this is you and I talking at a bar.
I feel like our podcasters are like, what was his name? He was in that thing. And you're like, oh, yeah, that thing. What was his name? It was like
Zach Galligan.
Zach Galligan. Okay, Zach Galligan, like, he was unknown at this time, but it's kind of crazy that he got this part. And did he do anything besides Gremlins 2 after this?
Yeah, he's been in a bunch of stuff.
Like what?
Okay, let's see here. He's got a very long IMDb list.
Oh, good for him. Let's moving on.
Yeah, it's very, very long. I mean, he didn't do a lot of very high profile stuff, I don't think.
Yeah, but he continued to work.
But he worked a lot.
Like I really liked him in this movie, and I enjoy him. So I mean, Joseph later cut out if I said anything negative, and make the people listening with us right now swear to the Lord God that they won't sell me out.
Yes, sir.
I'm just kidding. There's a lot of like connections to Back to the Future in this, and I'm gonna see if you know what they are.
You're gonna see if I know what they are?
Yeah. What are the connections to Back to the Future
in this movie?
So, all right, my favorite, like one of my favorite setups is when you go to an idyllic small town. You go in and this is like a Norman Rockwell painting in the beginning, and I'm always on board. Like when I see it's like Poltergeist when you come in and the kid's riding his bike and he's got beers for his dad, and he goes there and the dad's watching a football game, and like the town's all beautiful, and And then it's like, then everybody dies and everything blows up. And there's just something ominous when you start off. So you see this town and it's during Christmas and it's a normal Rockwell and everybody knows everybody and there's a suite, and you even got the wicked witch lady that shows up and she's like, we're here to make money. Anyway, that was Hill Valley. That's the Hill Valley town square they shot that on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the opening scene is in Hill Valley.
Well, where's the clock? Where's the famous Hill Valley clock?
Well, it's not. They changed the set decorations. You're like, bullshit, it's Hill Valley. I don't see no fucking clock, and it's snowing.
Yeah, there's no clock.
The mom was Lorraine's mom in Back to the Future.
Yeah. I forget the actress's name, but yeah, she did a ton of that role where she was like the mom or the mom of the mom. She was always that character.
Is it Francie Lee McCain? Joseph?
It's us being bad at our
Hold
jobs
on.
again.
I was getting a photo to show Ty the clock is actually just off screen.
What?
In the title screen. Yeah, I'll show it to you. Hold on.
Wow. I will stand corrected then, sir.
Yeah.
Right there. Steven Spielberg presents all the way to the right. You just can't see it. But that's the clock tower.
Oh,
right
yeah.
there.
Yeah. Wow. I stand corrected because
this came before Back to the Future.
Now that the clock is there, this is definitely Hill Valley.
Francis Lee McCain.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one that Wes was guessing.
Yeah, Francis Lee.
I mean, and if you click on her IMDb, she's got a whole bunch of roles like this one where she's playing the mom or whatever.
They were originally going to have real apes to be the Gremlins, and true story.
So we could have that scene from Nope.
So listen to this. If you read about it, they put a Gremlins outfit on a monkey, and it was a chimpanzee, and it lost its fucking mind.
Yes.
And then they're like, all right, we can't do this. And I'm like,
No.
This is where the scene in No comes from.
Yep.
That's where it is. Like, where do you think, like, chimpanzees, they're a few genetic dots away from us. Like, it's like, you're not going to have these weird strangers just grab you and throw some mask and an outfit, and you have no fucking idea what's going on, and not just lose your fucking mind. But they did that, and I'm sure some people got their faces ripped off, but they just don't talk about it.
There's an alternate universe where they actually wound up doing that, and Phoebe Cates had her face ripped off by a chimpanzee.
That's where Phoebe Cates went. I was wondering where she is. So I know you got a heart out. Do you want to jump to the miniature monster movies?
Is there anything else we want to say specifically about Gremlins? My last thought on Gremlins, it's the kind of Christmas movie I like because, like Die Hard, the fact that it's happening at Christmas time actually matters to the plot, right? It's not just, Christmas isn't just the backdrop of the movie. Even though the movie's not about Christmas, the movie's about little monsters tearing up your neighborhood and all that. Like Die Hard is about terrorists taking over a building, and you have to kill them with your 9mm. But the fact that Christmas is going on when these things are happening is actually sort of important to what's happening, important to the plot and stuff. So if you make a movie about Christmas like this, that's my favorite kind of Christmas movie.
So explain to me how is Christmas important to the plot
of Gremlins?
Yeah. Like, if you took Christmas out of it, how would the plot change?
Well, so you wouldn't get the amazing Phoebe Cates story.
Okay, but that's a story. You would take the story and it'd be the same movie.
Yeah. The whole point is that the gizmo is a gift, right?
Yeah.
That
could be a birthday.
It could be a birthday, and all of the things happening in a town that is sort of shut down by snow adds to like the
that's
the flavor.
That's the winter. That's not specific to Christmas.
So your point is that you can just be a douchebag?
No, the point. No. The point I'm making is the Christmas is an atmosphere in this movie, and the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. The plot. So like,
but that atmosphere is important to the feel of this movie.
Like I think about Die Hard, and like the reason that he's traveling there. The reason that there's like a Christmas party, so everybody's not doing their traditional thing. The reason that they're there at night, the reason they attack at a certain time, like Christmas is important in that way. But Lethal
Yeah,
Weapon.
well, they could be having a party for some other reason, Wes. He could be flying out there because it's his anniversary. It could be other things.
That's all fair points. That's all fair points. But like, so.
But it's not the same movie.
It's not the same movie. And I think I do all this to say, I was playing the devil's advocate, right? Because we get in those debates of why I think Die Hard's the best Christmas movie ever made. And there's like, well, it's not a Christmas movie. And the reality is like when people talk about Christmas movies, because the movie's about Christmas spirit, like the movie's about Christmas is the point. But I disagree. I think if Christmas is in the atmosphere and it's a part of the look and the feel and the vibe and the backdrop of the Christmas movie, then it can be a Christmas movie. But like Lethal Weapon takes place in Christmas, and I won't consider that a Christmas movie.
No, the thing with Lethal Weapon is yes, it does take place during the Christmas holiday, but it does not have that atmosphere of like Gremlins or like Die Hard, where the Christmas stuff is sort of flavoring everything that's happening. There's like 2 scenes in Die Hard where like it matters that it's Christmas. I will say though that I'm glad that it is Christmas in Die Hard, so that they have the scene where Gary Busey shoots the TV.
Yeah, it's fucking Christmas.
It's fucking Christmas. He blows the TV away.
What day is it? It's fucking Christmas. And I like the Christmas tree scene in the beginning of Lethal Weapon. Yeah, that's great. We should do Lethal Weapon one day. We're big Lethal Weapon guys. We should do it.
But I agree that Lethal Weapon, even though it takes place during Christmas, it's not the same. It's not the same as like Die Hard or Gremlins.
Yeah.
Before we move on, do you want to do any actor nods, mentions for the other people in the cast?
Yeah, Corey Feldman. I loved me some Corey Feldman when I was a kid. I love he was always fun to watch. This was after Gremlins and before Lost Boys.
So you were a Feldman guy, not a Hain guy.
I was dual Corey. Yeah, I think you can do them both. And
I bet some people have.
What was Mrs. Beagle? What was her name? The actress's name, real name? Do you know, Joseph?
It's Polly Holiday, aka Kiss My Grits from Alice.
Oh, that's right. It was her. Ew, that's interesting. I used to love that show. I used to watch Alice all the time. I did not connect those dots. I think she was like modeling her performance off the witch in Wizard of Oz. That's great. Okay, so let's do top 5. Top 5 scary miniature monster movies.
Which I think that's an interesting category because miniature monsters is sort of its own genre of horror. And after Gremlins came out in the 80s.
And Gremlins kind of kicked it off, wouldn't you say? Was there anything prior to that?
There was other stuff before that, but it was never like a genre like it was. After Gremlins came out, tiny monsters became a genre. And they made tons of tiny, like there was we were joking before we started recording that like Gremlins came out and then was immediately ripped off by like Critters, which was then immediately ripped off by Ghoulies, which was then immediately ripped off by Munchies. Like there was like this whole like descending spiral of terrible tiny horror movies or tiny monster horror movies that was all started by Gremlins. Oh, hey, here's some trivia for you, Wes. Okay. Which of the tiny monster movies starred Leif Garrett, 1980s rock star?
Critters?
Yeah.
You remember when he threw the bowling ball down at the pins and they like shattered? Critters is at the top of the list for me. I think Critters, they were trying to make what Gremlins was originally, like a dark Gremlins that were evil and that will kill you.
And they added like a sci-fi element.
Yeah, they added a sci-fi element. And then whenever there's like bounty hunters from another planet that are coming to get them, then I'm all in. What are your thoughts on Critters?
The first time I saw Critters when I was a lot younger, I really liked it. I loved the guns that Leif Garrett and the other bounty hunter from the future had. The ones that were the barrel like extended out before they shot. I love this scene where he traps one of the critters in the toilet and steps on the lid to keep it in there and then blows the toilet up with his gun.
Yeah,
like that kind of stuff. Like young me thought that stuff was just badass.
Yeah. Wait, old you doesn't think it's badass anymore?
I've grown old and cynical. You know that.
Yeah. The little creature in Cat's Eye, and I don't know how this, how we qualify movies like that, but that little creature that steals your breath in Cat's Eye, that terrified me when I was a kid.
Was that a young Drew Barrymore?
Yeah, I think it was a young Drew
having her
Barrymore.
breath stolen.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I would throw The Gate in there.
A lot of these have, and I'm not arguing against The Gate, but I will say that a lot of these have kind of that goofy sort of air to them. The one that does not, that it didn't do well in the theater, but I really enjoyed it, was Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
I never saw Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
Okay.
Give me a little breakdown of what it is.
It is a little girl. So the family moves into this house, and this little girl starts like having these imaginary friends, and it turns out that they are actual tiny little demons in this house.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it gets darker as it goes. Like you start to realize like they're not her friend. It's the thing I loved about Don't Be Afraid of the Dark is it sets you up to think it's one kind of movie, and then it turns out it's actually it's the other kind, because they sets it up like the little girl is going to befriend these little demons, and they're actually going to be her friends, and that's going to be no, they're actually fucking demons, and they're going to carry the little girl off into their pit of torture.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
that's so dark.
It's so fucking dark. Yeah.
Well, then, I mean, just you explaining it, I would support it being on the top 5.
So the ones that are definitely not on the top 5, Hobgoblins is one of the worst movies ever made. The only time you should watch Hobgoblins is if you're watching the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version of Hobgoblins. It is super funny. That's one of the best Mystery Science Theaters ever, is their version of Hobgoblins. It's fucking hilarious. Do not watch it without that. You'll be sticking a pistol in your mouth by the halfway point. Spookies, also one of the worst movies ever made. Do not watch that movie. Bad Milo is terrible. Bad Milo is about a poop monster. Yeah.
Tell me, what's the premise?
This guy poops out a monster.
Oh,
and then it's like,
what is that?
Now the one that I would add to the list that we don't have is Basket Case. Have you seen Basket Case?
No.
So Basket Case is about a guy who was born with a Siamese twin, and I'm giving spoilers here. Spoiler alert. The Siamese twin is basically just like a head and a couple of like stunted clawed arms stuck on the side of his torso. They surgically remove it, but it doesn't die. They're like, well, we're going to remove this and it'll just die, but it doesn't.
Right.
And so he spends the rest of the movie carrying this little horrible monster around in a basket. But every time he becomes friends with somebody or gets close to somebody, his brother comes out of the basket and murders them.
How? It doesn't have...
Well, it pulls itself around with its arms, and it's like super strong for its size. But it is so creepy looking. Here, look at the picture of it. It's so creepy looking, man.
God, it looks so creepy.
Yeah. Anyway, Basket Case has a tiny monster that scared the shit out of me.
Joseph, ask the people that are listening with us if they have any movies that we missed. If they have anything that they want to see.
Chucky.
Yeah. Chucky belongs on the list, but I admit that I hate Chucky movies.
I'm not a Chucky fan.
The first one or everything else?
All of them.
Yeah.
The fact that there is an ongoing Chucky TV show baffles me. How do you make a fucking TV show out of that idiotic premise?
Yeah, my boy Devin's on that.
Yeah, well, ask him how they make a TV show out of that idiotic premise. I mean,
so which one makes the list?
I'm glad he's getting a paycheck, but
yeah, which one makes the list? You're the one that
Leprechaun or Basket Case.
I mean, we should at least mention Puppet Master. Puppet Master, like, is a long-running horror series. I know some people are fans of it. I'm not a fan of it, but it's got its fans. Small Soldiers has the advantage of including Tommy Lee Jones. Anything with Tommy Lee Jones is cool. If it was up to me based on things that actually are scary, I would say Basket Case. If it's based on things that are actually well made, I would say The Gate. I think The Gate is a well-made movie.
I'm going Gate. I didn't see Basket Case, but I really liked The Gate when I was younger, and I think it's one of those movies, like those low-budget horror movies, that it actually is really impressive for the budget and what they had to make it.
Yeah, I agree. The Gate is another one that kind of tricks you in the same way that Don't Be Afraid of the Dark tricks you. You think it's going to be like a kid's movie, but it's not. Yeah. It's fucking dark.
Thank you guys for hanging out with Tie Night Guy. We talked about Gremlins, one of the least talked about great Christmas movies ever made. We love you. Like and subscribe. I don't think I've ever said like and subscribe ever at the beginning of the film.
No,
I think everybody that would have liked and subscribed they're here. All the other people that we need in the beginning, they're fucking gone, right? So we probably have 2 of our 8 that are still here to the end, and we could have got 8 likes if I said it in the beginning.
Yep.
So anyway, thank you guys. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.